for fun and time to be sure your kids are up to date on immunizations.
Hey,
So
welcome
schedule
to
a
the
checkup
Mormon
with
News
their
Roundup.
doctor
I'm your
and
humble
learn
host,
more
Steve
at
and I'm
VBA.
joined here by Ryan Josiah. Ryan, how you doing?
Hi, good. Happy to join you.
Yes, this is going to be a tremendous episode. Just to give everybody a gist of what's going on here, this is Real Talk Mormonism number 13. Live calls, conversations on StreamYard at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's August 24th, 2024. If you want to join the show, if you want to ask Ryan anything, he is up for it. He welcomes the haters. He has no problem with that, right, Ryan?
That's right. Well, I get plenty of haters on my own channels, and I've kind of learned how to deal with them, what to say. So yeah.
That sounds absolutely tremendous. And get ready for an unforgettable episode. We deep dive into the world of Ryan Josiah, one of the most influential ex-Mormon TikTokers of all time, who has made a number of waves online. We're going to talk about his journey from a devout Mormon to a viral sensation and take a closer look at his most jaw-dropping and impactful TikTok videos. From thought-provoking insights to hilarious takes on life after leaving the LDS Church, Ryan's content has captured the attention of thousands. Tonight, we'll be breaking down his most viral moments, his top 5 most impactful TikTok videos of all time, discussing the stories behind the videos. This is a director's commentary and a fascinating look into one of the rising stars of ex-Mormonism. And we're going to find out what makes Ryan tick, but that's not all. This is your chance to talk to Ryan directly. Call into the show, ask him anything, or me either, for anything you wanted to know about his journey, his content, or anything at all. Is there anything that I've left off here, Ryan?
Well, that was a very generous introduction. I appreciate that. I just feel like a regular dude who has a hobby on TikTok, but yeah, I recognize that people do. Oh, I'm bouncing here. I recognize that people do, admire certain things and look up to certain things, and I'm just glad to be a part of the community and be able to, help get certain things out there now, into the world.
You're the only person out there. We've had you on for 2 episodes of the Mormon News Roundup. We had you on episode number 81, which was like 10 months ago. And then we also had you back on episode 110, where we talked about the church building, buying the Kirtland Temple project for $192 million. You're the only person who's ever come on for 3 episodes. Either I question your discernment or you actually really like this channel. I can't figure out which.
Yeah. Well, you should question me in various ways, because that's how we get to the truth of things. So I welcome questioning. But yeah, I appreciate other channels as well that helps get information out there, that helps talk about the things that I feel like need to be talked about instead of buried.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I've noticed about your channel is that you have incredibly heartfelt takes. They're absolutely amazing. And, a lot of people put together some TikTok content that is, 30-second to bubblegum. They stitch things together. But yours are like mini documentaries. Absolutely fascinating. Tell us, what is the thought process that goes behind making your TikToks in general?
Well, to understand that, I feel like maybe I should go back to why I started TikTok. I was working with a fellow former Mormon and telling him all these things that I was learning from books that I was reading and podcasts that I was listening to. And he kept encouraging me, like, you should start your own channel somewhere to get this information out there, because some good history. And so that's where it all started, where I just wanted to share what I was learning from various sources. And so I compiled things that I had learned, and it took off. So I've just kept doing it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so let me ask you, before we dive into that, I'm having a little bit of a problem with my camera focus, but we'll just have to move past that. Maybe that's a good thing, because, too much of a close-up might be a bad thing. But let me ask you, you go back to, growing up in the church, you're a very faithful member, you went to BYU, and then you had a crisis of faith, shall we say. Why do you continue to remain in this space? Because you go back to like Elder Maxwell, who's one of the church's leaders back in the 90s and early 2000s. And he said there's a certain stereotype that people who leave the church cannot leave it alone. So why are you continuing to engage in the ex-Mormon space? In fact, I was on a podcast recently, the Where Will You Go podcast, that's hosted by on Mormon Discussions. And she kind of postulated the idea that it's the ideal that you should, if you lose your faith and you move on to something else, you leave it behind, and that's supposed to be the ideal. Why have you not left the church alone? Why is this still very important to you that you're releasing so much content regarding the LDS Church?
Good question. It's for a few different reasons, really. Partially because it is really my whole community, or it was my whole community until I left the church. My family ancestry is Mormon on every line back to the pioneers, just about. And I live in the Mormon corridor, in Morador, as I like to call it. And then as we go back to why I started TikTok, it turned into a hobby of mine. When I first left the church, I felt this insatiable urge to learn everything I could, because I realized that I had been deceived in certain ways and lied to in other ways, and was just finding out these things that felt like I should have known from the time I was a child if I was going to dedicate my life to the church. And so as a result of this insatiable urge, I started learning a whole lot, and I've just continued to learn, because it's turned into something. It started as more of an obsessive compulsive type of thing, and it's turned into just a fun hobby. And that's why it's fun to take on the haters, to see what they think, to see how they think, really, and to answer their questions, because it's not personal anymore. It's just, like I say, it's just a fun hobby.
Well, let me ask you a couple more questions before we jump into those TikTok videos. There's been a criticism out there of people who do ex-Mormon content, and that you're trying to break up families, because if a true believing member of the church comes across your channel and watches a TikTok video in which you question the church's truth claims, they might also question the church's truth claims. They could end up leaving the church, and that breaks up families, and it leads to a lot of harm. That is the argument here. Why is it that you feel comfortable making this kind of content, knowing that if people were to watch it, they might break up their faith and you break up families? Are you not trying to break people's families up? Is that not immoral by making this type of content?
Yeah, well, I get accusations like that somewhat frequently, and honestly, that's one in particular that's a little upsetting, that feels kind of hypocritical, because what I see within the ex-Mormon community is loads of people whose beliefs have changed, and who want to now learn how to be in communities, whether it's believers or non-believers. Now they have both within their community, and they want to learn how to jive with both. And it's the believers that are like, whoa, 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 what have you done? And that's kind of what's happened, for example, with my own family, with my parents in particular. It's unfortunately been really hard at times to maintain a good relationship, even though, like, I'm not doing anything different, I'm not sharing anything with them, but just the fact that I'm not in their club, you could call it, is kind of their mindset. It's been really hard for them to deal with, and so I'm here trying to build bridges, and it's been really hard to build bridges. So yeah, I kind of see the opposite, where I'm trying to get information out there to allow people to make decisions for themselves, but I try to do it in a respectful way, so that whether you're Mormon or ex-Mormon or anything else, then you can just take this information and appreciate it. And one of my biggest compliments has been from someone who approached me and said, I have a friend who I just can't share any ex-Mormon posts with. She gets so upset, but I can share yours. And that was the best compliment I've ever gotten.
Yeah, that is good. Now, is it immoral to make money off of ex-Mormon content? I don't know if you're monetized on TikTok, but is that an issue?
Immoral, like, it's something that I take some time with. So I feel like it's fair to be compensated for some time, really. But I don't like to say, for me, it is more of just a hobby. I do make something like $3 a day off of TikTok. That's my average so far. So not like I'm getting rich off of it, but it's that honestly is one thing that keeps me going. But it's not like I'm getting money from the church or church members or even from my own followers. It's just TikTok itself that rewards creators for bringing people to their platform, and I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, let's take a look over here. Oh, well, just one or two more questions. Let me ask you a couple last questions. Sure. When I came across your channel, your takes are very heartfelt. They seem very well constructed, And there's a certain empathetic quality in the ex-Mormon content. There's a lot of people out there, and I believe there's a space for it, but you see them dressing up in the temple robes or are doing somewhat disrespectful things and provocateurs, trying to get the clicks, doing the twerking in front of the temples and maybe somewhat disrespectful content. But yours is like the opposite. It's like the most empathetic. It's like you're really talking to someone that you really care about. Is that deliberate? Because you haven't really fit into the typical anti-Mormon or ex-Mormon angry tropes. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I wouldn't say I haven't done any of those things. I like to stay respect, especially in my videos where I want to share history, share these things that I wish I would have known as when I was a believing Mormon. I make sure to keep those more neutral and just present the information and let people do with it what they will. But I have also participated in other things. I've done mocking videos or just for fun videos. I have a certain audience, and I know what my audience likes, and I like to have fun with them. And so I also, it's my channel, it's my space, and I remind people in the comments that if you don't like it, feel free to scroll on, feel free to block. It is my channel that I'll do with what I like, but I don't know. I kind of have a bit of a balance of a lot of respectful stuff, and then I have some that has a little fun at the same time.
Yeah, if you want to join this show, ask Ryan anything about his channel or about Mormonism in general. We'd be very grateful to have you onto the program. This is Real Talk Mormonism, number 13, live calls and conversations. Now, looking over here at your channel here, got 21,000 followers, which is about 10,000 more than me. But if you look at the overall channel here, what is the basic idea? What are you trying to accomplish with this channel? Is there a purpose? Or are these just your random thoughts? Do you have your tagline here is former Mormon, current human. What are you trying to generally accomplish with it?
Well, I'm with my followers, I'm trying to fill the conference center, and I'm almost there. No, as far as content, really it is just whatever is going on in my head at the moment or current Mormon news. That's why I appreciate your channel, because I kind of do the same type of thing, just talk about things that are happening. And so I just kind of go with the flow as far as what people are talking about or what's in the news, or if I have a thought of my own in particular that I just feel like sharing. So nothing in particular. It's just what's happening.
Yeah, these videos are kind of like mini documentaries like this. It Came to Pass by Who Really Wrote the Book of Mormon, where you review Lars Nielsen's book, which is absolutely incredible. It's like the best 10-minute sum up of that book that you can possibly find. How long did it take you to make this TikTok in particular, which is like 10 minutes long, full of research? This isn't just somebody who's really, a shallow view of it. You've really done the homework and the researches on this. How long does that 10-minute video take you to make?
Well, it starts with learning the information in the first place, reading the book, or if with other videos, I have gone through Wikipedia articles and bought historical books for myself. And so there's like a video like that would have taken several hours of research in advance, which is, like I say, more of just my own personal hobby. But then I use that to put together a script. I don't use I just use my phone for everything. I type up a script on my phone. And then at that point, I record it one paragraph at a time. And so it takes something like that could have taken as much as an hour to record. Usually it's more like half an hour for a long video like that. And then it takes me another, 2 or 3 hours to edit it together, to splice in all the images or videos that I want to include. And so altogether, it kind of depends on the video, but it can take upwards of 10 or 20 hours for one 10-minute video, depending on how much you're counting.
That's absolutely crazy. Now let's cue this up here. We're going to sort this by the most popular. We have the latest videos right here, and then we have the oldest, but we're going to search by the most popular videos now. And we've got the top 5 most popular videos of Ryan Josiah. Again, this is Real Talk Mormonism 13. If you want to ask Ryan a question or myself, feel free to follow the link, and we welcome any pushback to Ryan's content. He'd be happy to address anything that you have. So let everyone take note out there that he is not hiding, and neither am I. We're ready to talk about any issues, including the content that he has made here. Let's check out this first one here, which is Gotta Make That Desert Bloom. Before we watch this, what is the background here of this TikTok? Gotta make that desert bloom.
Ooh.
What are we going to see here? Why did you make this video? This is your most popular TikTok of all time.
Yeah, that was the most viewed, which was a bit of a surprise. That was right when I was just brand spanking new, just starting to make content. And that's before we had our first wet winter in Utah. You know, we'd had, the news was saying that research and science says that Utah and the surrounding area is in the worst drought they've had in 1,200 years when they look at like tree rings and things like that. It was the worst in 1,200 years. And so I'd said that that's for background in the video. So I had made a separate video about the church's perfectly green lawns at all of their church buildings. And my cousin actually reached out to me and said, hey, you should go to this church building in the neighborhood I grew up in, because there's the LDS church across the street from this other church, and I think it would make for a good video. And so I stopped by there when we were in the area one day and made this. So yeah, just keep in mind this was more than 2 winters ago when we were still in our crazy drought.
The Make the Desert Blossom Like a Rose, that's a reference from the Book of Mormon. Is that correct?
Book of Mormon, or I can't remember if that's originally where it's from. It's scripture somewhere.
Yeah, or Spencer Kimball, or LDS leader. I believe it is from the Book of Mormon, though I'm not 100% sure. Might be from the Bible, but at any rate,
yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. So you have all of these videos here, Ryan, that it takes you hours upon hours, dozens of hours, research, history, all of the incredible effort, the heartfelt, the multiple takes, the stress, having to do it when your kids are asleep, when you're away from your wife, all the thought, and you make one video, which literally there's no cost to this video, and this is going with 200,000 views. Can you explain that?
I can actually. That was a surprise to me. It's funny because, you know, this one is just like, oh wait, honey, stop! I stop the car. I need to just walk across the street with my phone for just a minute. And then we drove on. And that evening we're just lounging in our living room. And I was like, what should I put in the video? And we just kind of like, top loads. That's funny. And a play on words with baptisms for the dead. And then it went super viral, at least super viral for my videos. And I couldn't understand it. Oop, I'm touching my mic. I couldn't understand it, because like I wasn't getting my typical audience in the comments. It was a whole bunch of Christian haters. And it went on for months and months with these hateful comments that were just crazy. I eventually turned the comments off so you can't find them anymore. But is that for this video that has 101,054 comments?
Right. Yeah. The comments are turned off. So wait a minute. You're telling me that the people out there thought that you were hating on this Baptist church because of its bad lawn and comparing it to the Mormon church, which had a green lawn.
No, it wasn't really Christian haters. It was people hating on me for criticizing the LDS church. Okay. Or question. I got so many people accusing me of making up the 1,200 years thing. And so I had initially done dozens of replies to them saying, no, maybe do a little bit of Googling before commenting next time, because this is a real thing. But then I went into the stats on that particular video and saw that all of these thousands and thousands of views were coming from the search feature. People were searching Jesus or something simple, just not related to ex-Mormonism at all. They were looking for Christian content, searching for Jesus. And they found my video. So that's why I got all the haters.
It's a marvel how the algorithm does work, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But if you actually go back, we covered this on the Mormon News Roundup. The Mormon church lawns remain green. So what happened is, as you were mentioned, there was a serious drought in the state of Utah. It was back in 2022. In that summer in particular was one of the worst droughts of all time. I mean, like the Great Salt Lake was literally like drying up when they were talking about arson that was going to infect all of Salt Lake City. It was
we're
really
not totally
dire.
out of the woods there yet. Yeah, we're still trying to recover from that because it got so bad. We need another third wet winter here.
Well, the last winter was very good for Utah. Really recovered a lot of the reservoirs, somewhat out of the woods, but not 100%, right?
Yeah.
But back in 2022, it was very, very bad. So the church said during this unprecedented drought that they were going to let the lawns go brown through their chapels and their temples. But as you pointed out here, Ryan, what happened to the most of the chapels and the temples?
I never saw that news of them claiming that they would let them go brown because, yeah, I was following it. Like at one point, I took a break from work and I visited 10 different church buildings. Since I'm in Utah, I have access to dozens of church buildings around me. And yeah, I kind of gave a tour of them to show how green they all were. And there was one that had a few little yellow spots and the others are just totally perfectly green. And yeah, I had no idea that they made that claim because, yeah, I haven't seen any yellow lawns anywhere.
Well, that's interesting. I'm glad you came onto the program, though, because the LDS Church did plan during that drought. This was in the beginning of June 2022, and it released a statement through it, and it said the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announced Wednesday that they are trying harder to conserve water and that they were going to see, this is the importance of water conservation. This is the church's actual statement on this. Yeah. And they said that they were going to let their lawns go of their chapels to go brown, and even the watering of the landscapes at temples, meeting house, and other buildings is being reduced. So the church made this claim that said, hey, it's a really bad drought. We're going to go ahead and reduce our water consumption. And everyone said, hey, bravo to the church. Nice job on taking the lead on this, because obviously keeping up appearances, that's not important. What's important is water conservation. But as we found out later from your video, and also not just your anecdotes, but Axios did a study on it systematically and went through and said Mormon church lawns remain green after water conservation announcement. More than 90% of the sites that Axios went out and looked at, they were still green. So what we saw here was a major disconnect. The church, recognizing that water conservation is an important thing, they made the effort and said, okay, we're going to let them go brown. And then, as your video points out, and as Axios did a study on, that simply did not happen. There's a major disconnect between what the church is claiming and what actually happened. Maybe that's why your video went viral.
Yeah, that's possible. That could have affected it as well. That to me doesn't say that the church did the right thing. It's more like they stopped doing the wrong thing. If they cut back that much and still had perfectly green lawns everywhere, they were using way too much water. They were abusing their water privileges, you could say. And to have them finally decide to start doing the right thing and be responsible with their water usage to the point where they can still have green lawns, but they're not overusing, it's not doing the right thing. That's stopping doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, but the big problem here is that they didn't actually follow through. So what we see a lot of times with church press releases, and quite frankly, what I've seen from covering the Mormon News Roundup, is that the church will release press statements that show that the church is either planning or has done something that is really admirable, like giving money away or helping the homeless or whatever else it is. And it seems like sometimes we can't confirm those things. And when we do, what the church is claiming doesn't match up with reality. And that's a serious problem. Any last thoughts on your number one viral, most TikTok moment of all time?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
Okay, that's great. Let's go on to number 2 here. This is when Jesus shows up at the Pride Festival here. What are we going to see here with you going to Pride Festival? This is this is a somewhat recent video, right?
Actually, that one was 2 summers ago. That was the first time I went to the Pride Festival, and I was just there at the parade for a couple hours is all it was.
Okay, so Jesus shows up at the Pride Festival. Let's check this one out here, and let's make sure I've got my sound on once again. This is only a 14-second clip here. This is incredible. And this is you at the Pride Festival, right?
Yes. Yep, that is me.
All right. And you do have an appearance here that is somewhat Jesus reminiscent. People, is that deliberate, or is that a coincidence?
That is deliberate. This is like a $15 Amazon costume. Yeah.
Let's check it out.
I love the sin and the sinner.
What did you say in there? What did you say?
I love the sin and the sinner, referencing the phrase to love the sinner, hate the sin. I was saying I love the sin and the sinner, just being funny.
Where was this Pride Festival, by the way?
This is the Utah Pride Parade that happens the first weekend of June, and so yeah, I just for fun I went as Jesus and did not realize just how insanely popular that would be to just show up as Jesus. People would like, I even had some people break down in tears and give me a hug and thank me for being there.
Wow.
As it's kind of healing for them. For so many people have had religious trauma, especially related to being told how broken and sinful they are just for being them, if they're gay or trans or whatever. And so to have Jesus there at the Pride Festival supporting them, you know, even if it's just a costume, it made a difference to a lot of people. And I wanted to also say this was, I got my bearings mixed up, but this was actually the video with the Jesus search term, and which is making me wonder why the other one went viral. I used to know back then. This is the one where people were searching for Jesus in the TikTok search bar, and this one came up and got so much hate. The other one went viral more naturally, if I remember correctly.
Now, why did people have hate on this video? You're just literally giving people a hug, and you're just saying, love the sinner, but hate the sin, which is actually tongue-in-cheek there. I don't really think that you believe in the actual concept of consensual homosexual relationships being a sin, but you're actually parroting back what a lot of people place into the mouth of Jesus. So I don't understand where the hate is. Why did people not like the video?
The most hate just came from simply dressing up as Jesus, because they have been told or taught by their church leaders that their church, which is run by Jesus in some way, does not support this at all. That pride festivals are sinful and filled with pride, as people are being so flowery and showy and visible. And so they're like, the main representative of their church is going to this event that they consider so extremely sinful. And so they found it to be sacrilegious. I got comments saying, well, you wouldn't do that as Muhammad now, would you? And
Wow,
it's like, let's stay on topic here.
That's it. Well, they actually have a point there. They definitely have a point. You had to turn the comments off, though. Why are the comments once again turned off?
Yeah, this is, like I say, this is the one that I was thinking of with that, because of all the hatred from Christians who, like, I started to feel nervous about my safety. Not that I've heard of anyone being tracked down as a result of just dressing as Jesus, but that night I had so much fun with this video before it had even gone viral. That night I went home and did a live while I still had my Jesus costume on. Did a live, didn't really do anything particular. All I was doing was sitting there like this, but in a Jesus costume. And that was one of my most popular lives ever, simply because of the controversy it stokes from being dressed as Jesus. And that honestly is one thing that I'm not afraid of doing, and stoking controversy in a way that highlights things that shouldn't be controversial. What I'm doing in going to the Pride Parade here is, as I explained a minute ago, helping people recover from religious trauma and bringing smiles to their faces. And I got so many hugs, so many photos. This last summer was my second year going as Jesus, but this time I had a custom-made sparkly Pride Jesus outfit where my sash was still, no, let's see, I had a red robe that was sparkly, and then the sash was rainbow, and the whole thing was sparkly and blinging, and I had hundreds, I don't know how many hundreds of people take photos with me, and I've had so many people since then say, oh, I saw you on social media, I saw you on whatever site. And a photo of me in my Jesus costume made it into the Salt Lake Tribune in their article about the Pride Festival, and turned into kind of a big deal that I think is going to be a tradition for me from here on out, because of, like I say, what it highlights about how we should be loving people. And Jesus was all about love, and the Pride Festival is all about love. So of course he'd be there.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. Now, let me ask you, you did a live on this. Do you think that it is inherently disrespectful to dress up as a religious figure And were you mocking Jesus? And if so, is that something that should be avoided? Is this going too far for people's sacred beliefs?
I can totally understand that perspective. Someone saying that it is disrespectful of their beliefs. At the same time, I do it because of what Jesus really stood for. I want to highlight what the Pride Festival is really all about. That if you were to actually get to know your gay neighbors, your trans neighbors, your queer neighbors, and hear their story, hear the things that they have gone through and what they are trying to achieve by just living the way that they want to live, it's all about love. And that's what Jesus taught. And so that's, while I understand the perspective of it potentially mocking their religion, that's not at all my purpose. My purpose is to highlight how your religion that you're so concerned about here is supposed to be all about love. And that's what I am trying to do as I go to these pride festivals dressed as Jesus, is highlight that.
Yeah, one thing that your channel really specializes in is an empathetic quality. There's something about your persona that is very welcoming. You saw that people just spontaneously come up and hug you, and it's in contrast to a lot of the tropes that I've seen out there, or really maybe it's not a trope, maybe it's a stereotype, or maybe it's real, where there's a lot of ex-Mormon anger. You know, the stereotype is that ex-Mormons are angry axe grinders, and your channel is like the opposite of that. Your persona is very gentle and it's very kind. Is that deliberate? Is that a part of your personality? How do you reconcile the idea of you're upset about what you said, the church being deceitful to you, but you haven't let that infect you as at least from your public persona as being an angry person?
Yeah, that is deliberate on my channel. Although it's partially because I did have an angry phase, and that was kind of in conjunction with my obsessive compulsive let's research everything phase. And I was kind of getting towards the end of that when I started doing TikTok. But my purpose for TikTok was to share information that won't just be shared with ex-Mormons, but with believing Mormons as well, because it's the things that I wish that I knew when I was a believing Mormon. And so I knew that I can't do this from the perspective of, this is so awful, your church is so evil, and you need to make sure and know this because you're being lied to. While some of that may be true, I know it won't accomplish my purpose of being able to have people share it with their believing and non-believing friends. So I make sure to keep it more neutral, at least with my historical, like, documentary type of videos. If I were to share something that's critical of their church, of the LDS church, it's usually more towards the end of the video. So they've gotten all the information, and then you have to stick around for the end, right? And that's where I stick in my opinion and what we can learn from this.
Yeah, very good. Now, we've covered your top two most viral ones. Now, your next one, the thumbnail on this is pretty interesting. You got a giant smile on your face, and then it says $5 million fine. What are we going to see with your third most, which has 135,000 views? What are you smiling about with a $5 million fine?
Well, I had done a few videos already on the church's money, as you know, when it became general public knowledge that the LDS Church had at least $100 billion in various investment accounts. I was one of those that really fires me up. That I have, like, before I left the church, I estimate that I gave $20,000 in tithing. I have a relative who estimates that he gave $500,000 of tithing before he left the church. And we all give this money expecting it to be used for good, only to find out they pay their bills with the church and then they stick it in this investment account to save up money for who knows what. I don't know. They don't know. We don't know. No one will say, and they're not using it for anything but building malls and rescuing insurance companies. And so I had already done these videos talking about this subject when it was news that the church was actually fined by the SEC, as you'll see in the video. And so this excitement of mine was legitimate. Like, I heard the news and I was like, honey, I can't do anything tonight. I need to do some research and type up a script. And so I just made it happen right then and there, because I knew that my audience, my followers would appreciate the information. And I didn't realize how how far out there it would get there.
Yeah, definitely. Let's take a look at this. The $5 million fine. This is when the Mormon Church was fined $5 million for fraudulently and shamefully hoarding hundreds of billions of dollars, and then was fined by the SEC $1 million to the church and $4 million to the church's investment arm. And you're reacting to that. You've had a number of videos that have discussed that and have been very great. Your videos are just, they give you the information that you need in a short amount of time. Typically, your videos are around 3 to 5 minutes long, and they give you a perfect summary of the issue and then your commentary at the end. That's why your channel is really one of the best ex-Mormon TikTok channels out there. Let's take a look at this one. I've got to make sure that this is on here.
But those of you who follow my channel and saw the news of the day probably know where this is going. The LDS mega church is actually being held accountable for deceptively and unethically hoarding and hiding their mountains of money. Can I tell you about it? As a preview, take a glance at the church's statement on what I'm about to tell you about. Church statements are usually short and to the point. Is it just me, or does this one scream damage control? So
let me just ask you, I want to jump in there. You seem very excited. You seem almost giddy about this. Are you delighting in the church's fine? Why are you so happy about that? That's what the hater might say. Well, why are you happy that the church got fined?
Because they've been abusing their privileges for far too long. Like I say, that we give this money expecting for them to do something good with it, and then they don't. But the main thing to me is, like, it's been a secret for so long. It's been since 1959 that the church has been public with their finances. And then they're caught with their pants down with this $100 billion issue. Now it's estimated that it's probably more than $250 billion total. And it's just so incredibly frustrating when there's such a huge, powerful, wealthy organization that is never held accountable for it, that they can always hold up their religious freedom card and say, oh, we claim innocence in one way or another. You can't prosecute it because of religious freedom, over and over and over again. When if it was any other organization, if it was a nonprofit, if it was a business doing this type of thing, their people would want to hold them accountable. And yet, because of what their people are taught, they just won't, and they won't listen to anyone else, of course. And so to finally have them be held accountable, at least in theory, the $5 million was about, I did the math once, they earned that much in interest in like 8 hours or something crazy. It was less than a day's worth of interest that they earned. And so the $5 million is nothing. It's literally pocket change to them. So it's not about the money. It was more just about the fact that they were actually caught with their pants down. It wasn't just controversy on the internet or one of these things. They were actually fined by a government agency for being dishonest and illegal with their money.
Okay, let's continue on. This is a great breakdown here.
Is it just me, or does this one scream damage control? So, the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, is a federal organization that was formed after the disastrous Wall Street crash of 1929 and the resulting Great Depression, and their job is to make sure things in the U.S. economy are fair, essentially. So the other day, the Wall Street Journal reported that the LDS Church was under investigation by the SEC for deceptive practices, and that they were about to face consequences, but at the time they didn't know all the details. Well, today we found out all those details, and I tell you what, are they juicy. Now, to LDS church leaders, this isn't new news. They have been trying to play damage control behind the scenes since 2019. Remember what happened in 2019? That's when the world found out via a whistleblower with a conscience that Jesus is one of the richest men on the planet. Well, that revelation apparently got the SEC's attention because there's this rule that if you have more than $100 million in certain types of investment accounts, and $100 million happens to be 1/1000th of $100 billion, you have to publicly disclose it quarterly with Form 13F. And the SEC hadn't seen any such form from the church in the 23 years since its investment management company Ensign Peak Advisors was formed. Come to find out, To obscure the amount of the church's portfolio and with the church's knowledge and approval, Ensign Peak created 13 shell LSCs, ostensibly with locations throughout the US, and filed Forms 13F in the names of these LLCs rather than in Ensign Peak's name.
So you're quoting here from the settlement agreement that the church negotiated with the SEC, admitting to the wrongdoing, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, gotcha. Let's keep on going here.
Why would they do that, you ask? They were worried about negative consequences. What negative consequences for being honest? Well, Ensign Peak head Roger Clark revealed in 2020 that they were worried that if church members found out just how much money they had stockpiled, church members would stop paying their tithing.
Okay, that's a very important point here because Roger Clark said the quiet part out loud. He said that the entire reason for the deception, and he was the head of the portfolio for the entire time, is that the church never wanted to give the members a reason not to give a donation. It wasn't because they had bad legal advice. It wasn't because they didn't understand federal law. It was so that they could obfuscate their wealth because they knew if the church members knew how much money that the church had, then donations might be curtailed. And all anecdotal evidence that we have since the fine has been levied on the church shows that that the amount of donations that the church has received has curtailed. Roger Clark knew what he was talking about, and it has come to fruition.
Yeah. I wonder if that statement of his was one of those where he meant it in one way, but it came out a different way because there are certain things that I actually just talked about this on a video I posted just today. There are certain things that are hard to understand if you've never known anything different. If you've always been in, we'll call it a cult for lack of a better word, then it's hard to understand why someone might call it a cult or why someone might say certain things are problems. And so when he said that, I wonder if he was just saying, if he was referring to tithing being a commandment required for your salvation, to go to the temple, to get to the celestial kingdom, whatever. We don't want to give people reason to endanger their eternal salvation. But when you actually say it out loud, actually it has a lot to do with the money. It's one of those, I think it came out in the way that it actually is, even though that's not how he was thinking it in his head, or at least I wonder.
Yeah, you're giving him you're giving the most charitable approach possible to Roger Clark, which is one of the reasons that your channel is so good, is because you give people the benefit of the doubt. You're not rushing to judgment, and I definitely appreciate that. Now, my sources indicate that Roger Clark was terminated just a few months after he made that statement because he said the quiet part out loud. That's from my sources, which I think are pretty good. So I really think that is the reason that he lost his job at Ensign Peak. So I'll just add that in there. That's my sources here.
So they literally hid it. The church, i.e. Jesus, has tried to explain away this mistake by saying that they relied on legal counsel. The lawyers made them do it. Now, if you pay attention, the church relies a lot on lawyers and the law. That's why they hire so many lawyers. What we did wasn't illegal. We make sure to always stay within the law. And while that is almost always technically true, it's also meant to distract from the question of whether what they do is ethical. Would Jesus hoard $100 billion and, when required by law to publicly report these earnings, hide it in 13 shell companies that all have different names and different locations, and all to make sure his followers don't have any reason to stop giving him money?
You bring up a very good point here as to what is the rationale behind this. I've heard a lot of apologetics are from church defenders who say it was the church who relied on the lawyers. It was the lawyers who gave the church bad advice. If the church had just hired better lawyers, this entire thing would not have happened. How would you respond to that kind of a how would you respond to that kind of a response to your video?
Well, in this particular instance, it wasn't the lawyers who did it. It was Ensign Peak advisors who did it under the direction of the First Presidency. The First Presidency are the only apostles who know all the numbers within Ensign Peak advisors, if I understand correctly. So, for example, Dieter Uchtdorf knows about what was going on because he was in the First Presidency. Now he is the only non-First Presidency member who has firsthand knowledge of this, and so they might get direction from lawyers, but everything has to be signed off by the First Presidency. And to me, that's not a fair excuse to just pass it off on the lawyers. The lawyers are there to do the client's bidding, to do what the client wants them to do. And so even if it was essentially the lawyer's decision, they are not the ones who should be held accountable for this, because they're just doing their job. They were hired to do a job, and they did it very well at the direction of the first presidency.
Right. And that's what we got from the SEC negotiated settlement. It says specifically in that settlement that senior leaders of the church blessed off on the 13 shell companies and every other part of this incredible scam every step of the way. It didn't say that it was blamed on the lawyers. That's not what was in the settlement. That was in the church's response to the entire fiasco. If it had been lawyers, then they would have put it in the SEC settlement. The fact that they didn't betrays that it was church senior leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So the SEC has fined Ensign Peak $4 million for deliberately obscuring their wealth. And they have fined the church itself $1 million for causing these violations. Oh, don't you worry. The church isn't using your tithing money to pay these fines. No, they're using the interest they've made off of your tithing money to pay these fines. So now the church would have you know there's nothing to worry about. They have complied with the law over a period of time. Ever since they were tattled on. And they regret mistakes made and now consider this matter closed. Consider this matter closed. Consider this matter closed. So if you all could just stop talking about this, that'd be really cool, all right? Yeah. I'll stop talking about this when Jesus starts behaving ethically and stops ripping off my friends and family. Or when he refunds me the many thousands of dollars of my own tithing money that helped pad his coffers. Whichever comes first.
So do you consider this matter to be closed, Ryan? The church literally made no accountability, and they just said, hey, we're going to pay the fine. It's not coming from your tithing, and we consider the matter to be closed. Should we just move along?
I think that was hilarious, because they were, you can tell they were trying their hardest to make this as quiet as possible. Let's answer everyone's questions and consider the matter closed. To state that 3 times within the same statement. It's just I still laugh about it. So no, the matter is not closed until they go back to pre-1959 ways of actually being open and honest with their finances.
Yeah, now in the actual comments or what you put on the title of the video, it says, hopefully this puts to rest the question, why do you care? It's not your money. Ryan, this isn't your money. This is church members' money. This is none of your business. You're not really a member of the church anymore. You may still be on the rolls, but you don't attend. This is only church members' business, so why don't you just bugger off?
Well, first, it is my money. Because I gave, like I say, around about $20,000 to the church in tithing, which a small percent of that, it's just maybe more than 10% from estimates, if I remember correctly, goes to these investment accounts. But that's where the church would like to tell you this wasn't your money. This was, like I said in the video, investments earned from your tithing money. And I say, what's the difference? I gave you $10 and you turned it into $12 in your bank account. That was my $10 that turned into your $12. That was my money originally. So it was my money, but at the same time, even if it wasn't, it's like I said in the end of the video, it's my friends and family who this is still affecting. They're still having to count their pennies after paying tithing in order to make ends meet, while believing just everything the church tells them and just going with it. They don't question it. And I think it's about time we should start to question it, question their motives, question what they're actually doing with it, instead of just handing it over and just trusting whatever they're going to do with it because they claim to be led by Jesus. That has failed in the past. Jesus wouldn't be so dishonest that the SEC fines him millions of dollars. He just wouldn't.
Well, let me ask you, what have the comments in this video been like? Because you talked about how a lot of people have pushed back. What have the comments been to your video on this one, which is your 3rd most watched TikTok video of all time?
The comments on this video, if I remember correctly, it was pretty mixed. That it got a lot of people excited for the reasons that I was excited to see them actually be held accountable. At the same time, it's still it's still got a lot of those same comments that I was anticipating of, why do you care? And like, well, watch the video and actually listen to my intent and you'll see why I care.
Yeah, from my math here, from the Widow's Mite report, it says that the church's total valuation at the end of last year was approximately $265 billion. And it said also that the church grew in valuation last year about $29 billion. But the church keeps growing at an exponential rate. It's going to become $1 trillion organization in only a matter of 20, maybe 25 years. So if the church is gaining valuation this year at, say, almost $40 billion, the church is gaining about $1 billion a week. The church makes about $100 million a day. And from my math, this fine represents 4 hours of church income. It is absolutely a pittance. Now, what's your final thought here on your third most liked viewed TikTok of all time here? What's your final closing thought on this?
This is one that I was so glad made the rounds, that it became one of my most viral videos, because this is one of the subjects that I am most passionate about. Anyone with that much power, that much money, needs to be held accountable. I don't care who you are, who is at the helm, whether you claim Jesus as your leader or not, you need to be held accountable if you are that powerful. So I'm glad I made the rounds for that reason.
Very nice. Now let's go to the fourth most viewed. We're going to go over your top 5, but the issue with this fourth one here is that there's some kind of an issue with the audio. What is the fourth most liked TikTok video that you got here, Ryan?
This one, I kind of made a mistake with this one. This one was a joke, and if you open the explanation at the bottom of the video, at least in native TikTok, it has all the hashtags, and one of the hashtags is funny, one of the hashtags is joke. I actually took a separate audio and pretended it was audio from the church. The funny thing is, it was so believable that it went viral. So many people thought it was real and didn't bother to open up the explanation on the bottom to see that it was just a joke. Do you have the audio elsewhere to listen to, or should I just explain what it was?
I'm sorry, I don't have the audio, but the caption here is leaked audio of the church PR department realizing that Generation Z is all leaving the church. And for some reason, the audio has been redacted. Can you explain one more time why is the audio not included in this?
It was a TikTok issue when I got a notification that particular sound had a copyright issue. So it had nothing to do with my video. It's just that sound, like I used that sound to make a video of that hundreds, maybe even thousands of people had also made a video from that sound. And that particular sound was removed from TikTok. But the sound was related to Israel versus Palestine and how these, I don't remember which, I think it maybe was whatever the American Israel Support Organization is called, was saying, we really have a TikTok problem. This is not a left versus right problem. This is an old people versus young people problem, that these young people are starting to see that Palestinians are suffering and coming to their cause, while the old people, we can just rely on them supporting Israel. And so that's what this audio was all about. But this certain clip, I listened to it and just thought, this just rings so true to the church that we have so many more people leaving the church, and the church tries to pretend that they don't. But you can look at the stats on, for example, the ex-Mormon subreddit to see how quickly that group has exponentially grown from a few thousands to hundreds of thousands in only several years, hundreds of thousands of members. And so anyway, that audio just rang true to me, and I just knew I had to use it in a video. But I do regret putting the funny and joke hashtags too deep in the explanation, because I don't like being tricky. I don't like being deceptive, and that wasn't my intention, but it definitely came across as that way.
Okay, got it. Okay, now our number 5 most liked or most watched Ryan Josiah TikTok here is the one that deals with the Timpanogos tribe massacre. And you said that this is the first video that you've restricted. What's going on with this video before we watch it?
I restricted this to 18 and up, and I had never felt the need to do that before. You'll see in the video that someone had messaged me and said, "Hey, can you talk about this?" And I had never researched it, and it just broke my heart. And it continues to, because there are others. You see in the comment over there to the right, Circleville Massacre, anyone? 1866. Just a week or so ago, I recreated a video about Circleville. I had tried to do it when I was shadow banned and didn't realize that it didn't go viral just because I was shadow banned on TikTok. But yeah, a week ago I finally recreated that video and found in the comments that there are still more incidents like this where the church has historically been very good at hiding certain things, or at least, or just not necessarily hiding as much as just we just don't talk about it. The one that everyone knows about is the Mountain Meadows Massacre, that we now know about because there have been books published about it. Like Juanita Brooks, I think, was the one who was worried about being excommunicated, but she did it anyway because it's the right thing to do, and now we know about it. And this massacre of the Timpanogos people, we still don't know about, just because we don't talk about it.
Got my audio muted there. Yeah.
There
Okay. So let's check out the actual video itself here. Let's cue this up and see what we got.
I got this tip from a follower. I've done plenty of videos in the past about disturbing Mormon history, but this one takes the cake. So, content warning, this is going to get real gory real fast. I cannot believe we didn't learn any of this in school. When Mormon settlers first arrived in the Great Basin in 1847, there were an estimated 20,000 indigenous peoples living throughout the valley. They had coexisted with the land and its resources, and for the most part with each other, for countless generations. They had encountered Christian missionaries as early as 1776 and had since then had other peaceful interactions with trappers and traders and others on their way through the valley. But when the Mormons arrived, things were different. They came in 1847 by the thousands with their cattle and their horses, and they immediately started building homes and fences on the land and along the rivers that the native populations depended upon. They depleted the rivers of their fish and the land of their plants and animals, showing no regard for these native populations who depended upon them for their survival. Naturally, there arose some conflicts between the now starving Native Americans and the Mormons, with some natives resorting to stealing or even just killing the Mormons' cattle and horses. Fewer livestock meant less overgrazing and competing for resources. In late February 1849, Captain John Scott departed Salt Lake City and headed south towards Utah Valley with a militia of 50 men to deal with reports of cattle being repeatedly stolen by 2 Native American men down there. When they arrived, they talked with a man from the Timpanogos Shoshone tribe and somehow convinced him, likely via threats, to lead them to a small encampment of families where these 2 thieves lived. That night, they surrounded the several teepees while their inhabitants slept peacefully, and when morning came, opened fire. 2 were killed right away, while the others took shelter in a nearby ravine, where Captain Scott ordered his men to throw rocks down at them. When one man ran unarmed trying to escape, he was shot in the back more than a dozen times. Conflicting accounts report between 4 and 7 Native Americans killed in the conflict over cows. Ultimately, 15 women and children would be captured, and the children would be separated and given to Mormon families to raise, so the natives would be less likely to attack them. The area where the attack took place for years was known as Battle Creek until the Mormons decided to change the name to Pleasant Grove. Tensions continued to escalate as the Mormons started to establish what is now Provo by building Fort Utah nearby the Timpanogos village on sacred land that tribes from all over the place would come to every year for an annual fishing festival. But did the Mormons care about any of that? Psh. Also around the same time, 3 Mormon men savagely murdered a respected Native man known as Old Bishop over a suspicion of him having stolen the shirt he was wearing. Fighting between the Mormons and the Timpanogos Shoshone got so bad that in the end of January 1850, the Bishop of Fort Utah, Isaac Higbee, met with the Prophet Brigham Young, the First Presidency, and the 12 Apostles, where they all agreed that the only way to keep Fort Utah would be genocide. Brigham Young is quoted as saying, in part, "Go and kill them. Let the women and children live if they behave themselves. We have no peace until the men are killed off." They had an extermination order known as Special Order No. 2 written and delivered to Captain George D. Grant. On February 8th, Captain Grant did practically the same thing Captain Scott had done in Battle Creek by taking his troops, the Nauvoo Legion, and surrounding the Timpanogos village during the night and surprising them in the morning, killing anyone who fought back. After 2 days of fighting, the surviving natives sneaked out during the night to escape, with some going up Rock Canyon and others heading towards Spanish Fork River. Brigham Young instructed the militia not to leave the valley until every Indian was out, so they too split up in pursuit of the survivors. Those who went up Rock Canyon came across several bodies of those who had either died of wounds or succumbed to the cold, but both groups continued murdering all men and any women and children who fought back. In the end, 1 Mormon was killed, while an estimated 102 Shoshone lost their lives. One Native American warrior who had frozen to death was known as Old Elk, and a Mormon by the name of Bill Hickman hacked off his head, took it home with him, and hung it by the hair from his ceiling. This apparently inspired a federal officer in the area, a surgeon by profession by the name of Howard Stounsbury, who ordered troops to go and find the corpses of natives who had been left to rot, behead them all, and ship the heads to a medical facility in Washington, D.C. for research. And so they did, to as many as 50 heads. But going back to the battle, Old Elk died of exposure, while his wife continued trying to escape up Rock Canyon. It is said that as she was trying to climb the rocky peak, she either slipped or maybe jumped to her death to avoid being captured, and as a result, the mountain was given the derogatory name of Squaw Peak after her. So the next time you attend the Provo City Center Temple or the Mount Timpanogos Temple, I hope you remember this history and pay tribute to the indigenous peoples whose land you are on, who were starved, kicked out, sickened with smallpox, and ultimately savagely murdered by the Mormons who came before you. God bless America.
Oh my gosh, that is quite a send-off at the end there.
That's exactly what I mean by saving my opinion for the end. You have to stick around for the end. It still gets me all heated. I'm getting emotional just remembering all the research that I did for that.
Yeah, I've been up to Squaw Peak many times. I had no idea that it had such a racist history.
Yeah, it's been renamed just a few years ago. I don't remember what it was renamed to, but I would imagine that most people still know it as Squaw Peak because it's always been called Squaw Peak, and that's where it came from. There, well, I don't know. We don't have, if I remember correctly, we don't have like documents proving that that's where it came from. That specific story. It's more like he said, she said from back then that ended up in journals or a newspaper or something. But yeah, just that whole story. Why don't we know that? That's where Brigham Young University is. BYU, the church's university, is there in Provo, on that land where that happened, and nobody knows about it. I had no idea that this happened. I'm a BYU graduate. I grew up in Utah. Why didn't I know this?
Yeah, me too. I mean, how did I miss this? I've heard of, there's obviously the Mountain Meadow Massacre. There's obviously the Missouri War where there were a number of atrocities. And there's also that massacre that happened up in northern Utah as well, that I've actually been to that site and I can't remember the name of it now.
The Bear River?
Yes, the Bear River Massacre, yeah. Right?
I'm actually putting together a video right now. It's probably going to be one of my longer ones, maybe even longer than this video. But yeah, I'm currently writing up my script for the Bear River Massacre right now.
Yeah, and where did you get the information for this particular TikTok that you made?
I tried to rely more on sources from indigenous peoples, from the Native Americans themselves. There was a particular guy who spent decades of his life getting to know various indigenous groups and hearing their stories. When we hear about they relied upon oral traditions, oral stories. They didn't write down their stories. They told them from generation to generation. And I've learned that as they did so, it wasn't just learning the story. It was learning it word for word to make sure it could be passed down accurately from generation to generation. And so he put together this book that I bought, that's sitting up on my nightstand currently. And then various sources. Actually, Wikipedia is an excellent source for a lot of things like this, not because of necessarily what's in Wikipedia itself, although it is much higher quality than when it was brand new, that it still kind of has that reputation. But as a result of when it was brand new, though, but it has a whole bunch of sources. If you read through the information, go to a link, and then you can see where that information came from. And then go to that. Like I've been able to, just the other day as I've been preparing for a video on the Bear River Massacre, I downloaded a whole book, 200 some odd pages, that is now on my phone in the form of a PDF that I'm able to rely on as well. And so, yeah, that's the type of sources that I used for this video and for other like documentary type of videos.
Yeah. Now, before we let you go here, you kind of dabbled into YouTube. You have a YouTube channel is out there as well. Ryan Josiah, 47 videos, 400 subscribers. It doesn't seem like you spend as much time on your YouTube channel. Do I have that correct?
I have not, but I have plans of eventually steering away from TikTok more to YouTube. I haven't quite made that happen. So I've just taken some of my better videos and reposted them to YouTube. But I have been pleasantly surprised at how much traction they get on YouTube. You know, you have a certain, for example, in order to be paid by YouTube, you have to have a certain number of followers and a certain number of watch hours over the course of the year. And the followers or the subscribers on YouTube, they build naturally. But the viewer hours I was worried about, but I just checked my stats the other day, and I'm already accidentally doing it just by reposting videos there. So I would like to make that more of a thing, to make that my primary location, because I don't know what's going to happen to TikTok these days. I don't know how
they keep threatening to take it down all the time.
Yeah,
because I guess it's owned by Chinese communists. I don't really know. I haven't really followed it that well to be sure. So I'm not sure. Hopefully it doesn't get taken down. That is for certain. But the great thing again about your channel is the fact that you get a kind of a triple whammy on your channel, because you get contemporaneous LDS news. You stay up very well on the news, and you give great takes. In fact, even just last journal conference, you got 7 posts giving reactions to all of it. So you get the current events, but not only that, as we saw from the Bear River, from your Battle Creek massacre, right? It's the Battle Creek. I've got that right. Yes.
Battle Creek followed by Timpanogos. It doesn't really have an official name because no one talks about it.
You get not only the contemporaneous, but you also get history, and then as a bonus, you also get shall we say, some conspiracies with the Carthage conspiracy, right? You get in a little bit of that too, right?
I had a lot of fun with that too. Yeah. That was a fun one where I do just kind of dabble in everything related to Mormonism. That Carthage conspiracy was fascinating as I looked into something that I hadn't ever looked into, which was the death of Joseph and Hiram Smith, and how there's a lot that we don't know. And those gaps have all been filled by the church, and no one else has questioned it or felt the need to, because who else cares about who killed Joseph Smith, you know? So, but as I looked into it, it was fascinating to find that the story might not be exactly what we thought it was. And so, yeah, I just kind of do whatever is happening in my head at the time. And that was one that was happening in my head for quite a while.
Now, before I let you go here, we actually ran 2 polls in the background during this live stream. I want to show the results of these polls. So number 1 is, I said Ryan Josiah, and I gave people 4 choices. I said, is the GOAT, is better than Jesus, is the brother I never had, or is my hero? And here are the poll results. 33% Ryan Josiah is the GOAT. That is definitive. With the other 3 actually all tying here. Is better than Jesus, is the brother I never had, and is my hero. Ryan, people think you are the GOAT. What do you think about that?
Well, I appreciate that. I'd like to remind people that I'm just a regular dude who has a hobby of learning things and then sharing what I learn. And but I am really glad that it resonates with people and that it's appreciated, that it helps individuals and families. As like I say, my goal is to be able to have both sides be able to take this information, and it has done some good in that way. And
now the other poll that I put out here is what makes Ryan Josiah's content so good, and I gave 4 choices: knowledge, empathy, looks.
Oh, no looks,
skills.
No looks. Come on.
I said, well, it looks like your knowledge is number 1 and empathy is right behind it. There you go, Ryan. People like your knowledge and empathy. And
I love that. Yeah, that is exactly what I'd like to get.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Before we let you go, what are your plans for your YouTube channel? What are your plans in the future for TikTok? What projects are you working on? And how can people get in touch with you?
Well, for now, just find me on TikTok and YouTube. I also have an Instagram. I haven't really done anything with that. They don't pay you anything, so so I haven't bothered. But I'd rather get $3 a day than nothing. But with TikTok maybe going the way of all the earth, and YouTube never dies, I would like to steer eventually towards YouTube. So subscribe to me there, and we'll see what I can do there. I'll continue to repost what I create on TikTok. Well, maybe not everything, because some of these like niche conversations, but like my documentary-ish video that I'm going to put together regarding the Bear River Massacre, I'm going to repost to YouTube definitely. So yeah, follow me there. And I would like to, what I have planned to do once I make that happen, is to have just similar to what you do actually, a once a week video just to talk about what's in my head. It might be the current news, might be what I'm researching. Like if I were to do one this week, I'd be talking about the Bear River Massacre in conjunction with other massacres that I've talked about, like the Circleville, Utah one, and the Timpanogos tribe one. And I've never made a video on the Mountain Meadows Massacre, but like that's the type of thing, just whatever is going on in my own head and what I find to be fascinating in conjunction with the news that's going on. So that's what I'd like to do eventually.
Yeah, now I just want to bring up one point here. We haven't talked about my moniker here. Do you see what I named myself for this episode?
Little factory avoider.
You got to avoid that little factory. At least that's what I've been taught. That's an inside Mormon joke for those of you out there who don't know. You will have
that is Google, a niche joke, that's for sure.
Yeah. You will have to be careful with your Google results in that situation here. Tomorrow night, hey, we're doing another episode of the Mormon News Roundup here with the legend, Mormon feminist here, Abby Hansen. She goes all the way back to ordained women. Literally, there's a documentary about this woman, and she talks about the transgender policy updates that the church has just released, which are absolutely incredible. We're going to be covering that tomorrow night on the Mormon News Roundup. Ryan, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on to Real Talk Mormonism number 13.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited for tomorrow because, yeah, that subject gets me going. I've posted about that as well. So, yeah, good luck tomorrow, too.
Thank you very much. You can't get any better content out there than Ryan Josiah on TikTok and on YouTube. Please subscribe to his channel. While you're at it, please hit the like and subscribe to the Mormon News Roundup. I want to give a shout out to Weird Alma on bandcamp.com for this episode's music. Thanks so much for joining us. And remember that no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.